You stand at the precipice of something profound, don't you? You've felt the tremor, the quiet rupture, the whisper of the sacred. The old world you knew, it crumbled, and in its dust you glimpsed a truth, a freedom, a light you never imagined. You called it spiritual awakening. You embraced it, felt its raw electric pulse ignite every fiber of your being. But then, the silence, the stillness, the strange, suffocating inertia. Why, after such a revelation, does the flame of motivation flicker and die? Why, when your soul feels finally unbound, do your feet feel heavy, your spirit strangely adrift, and the world itself seem to hold no appeal? You've tasted liberation, yet now you are trapped in a profound, unsettling stillness, and you ache to know why. Before the awakening, there was a world you meticulously constructed, a fortress of identity built on the shifting sands of early wounds. Remember the tender, vulnerable core of you, the part that first encountered the sharp edges of life? Perhaps it was a whispered critique that felt like a scream, a moment of not being seen that felt like abandonment, or a subtle message that your authentic self wasn't quite enough. You learned very early on that certain parts of you were unwelcome. The messy parts, the loud parts, the parts that dared to feel too much or too little, the parts that simply were. You absorbed the subtle cues, the fleeting glances, the unspoken judgments that shaped your emerging sense of self. And in response, a deep protective mechanism kicked in. You began to prune yourself, to edit your own existence, to fit, to be loved, to simply survive. This is where the seeds of your pre-awakening motivation were truly sown, not in a garden of genuine desire, but in a barren land of necessity. You learned to strive for external validation, to achieve, to acquire, to perform, to be what others expected, because deep down, the echo of that early shame or inadequacy still reverberated. You chased success not for its own sake, but for the elusive feeling of being good enough, of finally silencing the inner critic that sounded suspiciously like a voice from your past. This striving became your lifeblood. It fueled your ambitions, defined your relationships, and gave you a sense of purpose, however superficial. You might have been driven by the need for recognition, the desire to prove your worth, or the relentless pursuit of perfection. Every goal you set, every hurdle you cleared, was another brick in the wall of your persona. The carefully curated mask you presented to the world. A beautiful, functional mask, perhaps, but a mask nonetheless, designed to protect the vulnerable, wounded self beneath. You built a life that looked right. It had the achievements, the relationships, the external markers of success that society values. And for a long time, this was enough. It provided a sense of control, a predictable path, and a distraction from the gnawing unease that occasionally surfaced from the depths. The motivation you felt then, that relentless drive, was a sophisticated coping mechanism. It was the frantic energy of a self perpetually trying to earn its right to exist, perpetually trying to outrun its own perceived flaws. But this kind of motivation carries a hidden cost. It depletes you quietly, consistently, because it's not fed by genuine inner alignment, but by the relentless hunger of an unhealed past. You were running on fumes, powered by the ghosts of what you believed you should be, rather than the vibrant, authentic essence of who you are. And as long as you were achieving, as long as you were busy, you didn't have to sit with the deeper questions, the quiet dissatisfactions, the subtle hum of unfulfilled longing that pulsed beneath the surface of your well-ordered life. This was your operating system, a deeply ingrained pattern of external, seeking to quell internal discomfort. And it worked for a time. It gave you momentum. It gave you direction, even if that direction was ultimately taking you further away from yourself. You were motivated, yes, but it was the motivation of a perpetual escape artist, constantly outmaneuvering the painful truths hidden within. And then the awakening, the crack in the facade, the moment the old motivators lost their power. Then came the crack, the spiritual awakening. It wasn't a gentle dawn. For many, it's a seismic tremor, a sudden, blinding flash that illuminates the carefully constructed edifice of your life, revealing its hidden cracks and hollow spaces. In that piercing light, the old motivations, the ones born of external validation and escape, suddenly lost their potency. They feel hollow, utterly meaningless, because the awakening forces a confrontation with what Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not simply the bad parts of you. It is everything you have disowned. Every emotion deemed unacceptable, every desire deemed shameful, every weakness you meticulously hid. every strength you feared to wield. It's the impulsive child, the raging rebel, the bitter victim, the hungry artist, the yearning lover, the quiet mystic. It's the parts of your authentic self that were deemed unfit for the good child persona you built, and in that suppression, a profound disconnect occurred. Imagine a house. You, the conscious ego, live in the well-lit, decorated rooms, your persona. But beneath, in the forgotten basement, in the dusty attics, are the parts of you you've locked away. They don't disappear. They simply fester, growing in power in the darkness of your unconscious. They are the unlived life within you. And now, after the awakening, the locks on those doors are rattling. The light from above is seeping into the forgotten corners. This is why you feel so profoundly unmotivated. The old drivers, the need to prove yourself, to gain approval, to escape discomfort, were all part of the persona's intricate dance. But the awakening has revealed the dance as just that, a performance. And the hidden, unseen parts of you are demanding to be acknowledged. Consider the energy it takes to maintain that carefully constructed persona, the constant vigilance, the self-editing, the suppression of authentic impulses. It's an exhausting masquerade. You denied your anger because good people don't get angry. You stifled your grief because strong people don't cry. You dismissed your deepest desires because they seemed impractical or selfish. Each denial, each suppression pushed more of you into the shadow. And the shadow denied doesn't sit idly by. It finds cunning ways to manifest. It emerges in your compulsive behaviors, the overthinking, the numbing addictions, the relentless pursuit of external distractions that promise fleeting relief from an undefined ache. It shows up in your inexplicable self-sabotage, in the ways you unconsciously undermine your own happiness or success. You might find yourself caught in endless loops of anxiety, analysis paralysis, or a gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, even when everything should be perfect. This hidden disconnect also explains the patterns in your relationships. You project your own disowned qualities onto others, whether it's the admirable traits you wish you had, or the despicable ones you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. You find yourself repeatedly drawn to people who embody your own unintegrated shadow, acting out the very dramas you deny within. This can lead to cycles of disappointment, conflict, and a persistent feeling of being misunderstood or betrayed. The spiritual awakening, in its raw honesty, has forced you to confront this inner schism. The old system, based on external validation and the denial of your totality, is breaking down. The motivation that once drove you was largely the frantic energy of the persona, trying to outrun the shadow. But now, the shadow is no longer content to remain in the dark. It's demanding integration. It's demanding that you stop living a half-life. It's demanding that you reclaim your anger, your grief, your wildness, your vulnerability, all the exiled parts. And until you embark on that terrifying, yet ultimately liberating journey of acknowledging and integrating your shadow, the universe, in its profound wisdom, will withhold the easy external motivation you once knew. Because to move forward with the old drivers would be to perpetuate the very fragmentation you are now being called to heal. It would be to continue the illusion. And your soul, having tasted truth, can no longer abide a lie. The stillness, the lack of motivation is not a punishment. It is a profound invitation. An invitation to descend into the depths, to reclaim what was lost, and to finally become whole. Now let's turn the gaze inward. Let's peel back the layers and truly see what this silent, aching lack of motivation means for you. Because this isn't just about abstract Jungian concepts, it's about the very fabric of your lived experience. The whispers in your own heart you might have been too busy or too afraid to hear. You stand at this precipice, looking out at a world that once shimmered with potential, now feeling strangely dull, muted, drained of its vibrant hues. Projects you once chased with fierce dedication now gather dust. Conversations that once sparked your interest now feel hollow, an obligation. Even the simple joys, a walk in nature, a shared meal, a beloved hobby seem to have lost their luster. The familiar yearning, the restless ambition has simply vanished. And in its place, a profound stillness, a kind of cosmic pause. For some, it's a terrifying emptiness, a void that echoes with unasked questions. For others, it's a quiet dread, a suffocating weight that makes every small task feel like an insurmountable mountain. You might find yourself staring at your screen, an endless to-do list mocking you while your mind drifts into a fog. Or perhaps you scroll endlessly, consuming content, numbing yourself. Anything to avoid the deep, unsettling silence that descends when you're alone with your thoughts. This isn't laziness. This isn't a failure of will. This is your soul, your deepest self, refusing to move forward with the old, fragmented motivators. It's a sacred strike. Your inner world is in a profound state of recalibration. The old energy sources, the drive for external approval, the fear of not being enough, the desperate need to feel worthy, have been cut off. They no longer work because your consciousness has seen through the illusion they sustained. Perhaps you notice a subtle, yet persistent loneliness. Even when surrounded by people, you might feel profoundly isolated. It's the loneliness of the soul who has glimpsed a deeper truth, but hasn't yet found a language or a community to truly share it with. It's the loneliness of the parts of you, your inner child, that were abandoned long ago and now, in this stillness, cry out for your attention. That innocent, wounded part of you, sensing the shift, is finally feeling safe enough to surface and demand connection, not with the world, but with you. You might be caught in cycles of overthinking, analyzing every past mistake, every future uncertainty. Your mind races, a hamster on a wheel, churning out worst-case scenarios, replaying conversations, dissecting every possible outcome. This mental hyperactivity is a desperate attempt to regain control, to find a logical solution to an emotional and spiritual crisis. It's the persona's last stand, trying to intellectualize its way out of the profound emotional depths you're being called to explore. It's a mechanism to avoid the very emotions the awakening has brought to the surface. And those emotions, they might be a chaotic storm. Unexpected waves of grief, rage, shame, or fear can swamp you without warning. You might feel a profound sense of sadness for the life you thought you wanted, for the parts of yourself you sacrificed. You might feel a simmering anger at the injustices you've endured, or even at yourself for not having seen the truth sooner. These are not random outbursts. These are the shadow's contents, finally released from their decades-long prison. They are raw, intense, and often feel overwhelming precisely because you've become so adept at suppressing them. This emotional intensity, coupled with the lack of outward motivation, can feel like a profound spiritual fatigue. You might question everything, your path, your beliefs, even the validity of the awakening itself. Was it all just an illusion? Are you broken? This is the ego, stripped of its old defenses, thrashing against the inevitable surrender. It's a necessary unraveling, but it can feel like a terrifying descent into madness. You see, the motivation you had before was like a river that flowed away from you, channeling your energy outward to build a life that satisfied external demands. Now, that river is changing course. It's turning inward, demanding that you use your energy to heal, to integrate, to rebuild from the ground up, not for the world, but for yourself. The stillness is not a void. It is a sacred crucible. It's the universe and your own soul, demanding that you stop doing and start being. It's a profound invitation to reclaim your disowned self, to tend to the wounds of your inner child, and to integrate the raw power of your shadow. And until that crucial inner work begins, until you begin to feel truly whole within, the external world will remain muted, and the wellspring of genuine motivation will remain elusive. This feeling, this profound lack of impulse, isn't a flaw. It's a sacred pause. It's your soul in its infinite wisdom, halting your forward momentum because the path you were on, the motivations that drove you, no longer serve your deepest truth. They were born of a fragmented self, driven by external validation and the desperate need to outrun the pain that lingered in your forgotten corners. Now the awakening has shattered that illusion. It has pulled back the veil, revealing the intricate patterns of fear and inadequacy that secretly shaped your every decision, every aspiration. You might feel a profound sense of exhaustion, not just physical, but soul deep. This isn't the fatigue that a good night's sleep can cure. This is the weariness of a spirit that has spent lifetimes, perhaps in a constant state of performance, perpetually trying to earn its worth, perpetually trying to fit into a mold that was never designed for its true form. The energy you once channeled outward, into careers, relationships, social obligations, even superficial spiritual practices, is now being redirected. It's being called inward, demanded by the parts of you that have been starved for attention, for healing, for integration. Think of the energy you expended trying to manage perceptions. To be good, to be strong, to never show weakness. Every moment of suppressed anger, every tear held back. Every genuine laugh muted to fit a social norm, created a debt. And now, that debt is due. The spiritual awakening has opened the floodgates, and the emotions you've meticulously tucked away are rising to the surface. You might experience waves of grief that seem to have no apparent cause, a deep, pervasive sorrow for lost time, for unlived dreams, for the innocence you perhaps feel was stolen too soon, or perhaps an intense surge of anger, a righteous fury at past injustices, at betrayals, at the ways you compromised your own truth. These are not random. These are the shadow's contents, finally screaming for recognition, demanding release from their long, dark confinement. This inner upheaval can manifest as a deep unease, an almost physical discomfort with simply being. You might find yourself restless, constantly seeking distraction, endless scrolling, compulsive consumption of information, or even a sudden urge to clean or organize with a frantic energy that brings no real peace. These are desperate attempts to regain a sense of control, to quiet the internal chaos, to escape the profound stillness that demands your presence. Your mind, the ever-loyal servant of the ego, attempts to rationalize, to intellectualize, to find a logical explanation for this profound emotional and spiritual crisis. It races, constructing elaborate narratives, dissecting every past interaction, forecasting every potential future outcome, all to avoid the raw, messy, overwhelming truth of your current emotional landscape. This overthinking, this constant mental churn, becomes a cage. It traps you in a cycle of analysis paralysis, where action feels impossible because every choice is scrutinized to an agonizing degree. You weigh pros and cons, but the underlying motivation is no longer clear. The external rewards that once drove you now seem arbitrary, meaningless. The recognition you once craved feels like an empty echo. You are no longer driven by the desire to succeed in the old sense, because your soul has seen beyond the illusion of that success. And this is precisely why the motivation has vanished. The old self, the persona you presented to the world, the self that was fueled by external validation and the avoidance of pain, is dying. It's not a dramatic collapse, but a slow, quiet withdrawal of energy. It's a deliberate cessation of all the unconscious drives that kept you running. Your spiritual awakening has exposed the deep chasm between who you presented yourself to be and who you truly are. And until that chasm is bridged, until the fragmented pieces of your being begin to integrate, until your inner child is comforted and your shadow is acknowledged, the universe will hold you in this profound, unsettling stillness. This is not a punishment. It is a profound act of grace. It is the universe and your own deepest wisdom giving you a sacred gift. The gift of pause, the gift of enforced introspection, the gift of true presence. Because to move forward now, with the old fragmented motivators, would be to continue the cycle of unconscious suffering, to perpetuate the very patterns you are now being called to transcend. The stillness, the lack of motivation, is an insistent whisper, a gentle yet firm redirection. It's an invitation to turn inward, to descend into the depths of your own being, to heal the wounds that have silently dictated your life, and to finally truly become whole. It's a necessary prelude to a motivation that springs not from fear or lack, but from the authentic, integrated core of who you truly are. This profound state you find yourself in, this lack of motivation born from the ashes of awakening, was deeply understood by Carl Jung. He saw it not as a regression or a failure, but as an essential, agonizing phase of the individuation process. For Jung, individuation is the lifelong journey of becoming a whole, integrated self, not just a collection of societal expectations and fragmented experiences. It is the arduous path of transforming the unconscious contents of the psyche into conscious awareness. Jung believed that when you embark on this journey, the psyche instinctively demands integration. The old, superficial drives that fueled your pre-awakening life were, in his view, the ego's way of maintaining its carefully constructed reality. But the awakening is a call from the self, Jung's term for the totality of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, the inner guiding center. The self knows that true growth, true purpose, cannot emerge from a fragmented state. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung famously observed, but by making the darkness conscious. This darkness he spoke of is your shadow. Your current lack of motivation is the universe's way of holding you still, of forcing you to confront this very darkness. It's an enforced retreat, a psychic demand that you turn away from the external world and finally face the disowned aspects of yourself that have been clamoring for attention. Think of it as a deep excavation. Before you were building on the surface, distracted by the visible structures of life. Now the self has called a halt. It demands that you dig down into the bedrock of your being to unearth the hidden trauma, the suppressed emotions, the forgotten truths that lie beneath. Your energy isn't gone. It's simply been redirected. It's fully engaged in this monumental internal task, leaving little, if any, for outward endeavors. Jung understood that the initial shock of integrating the shadow can be overwhelming. When you finally acknowledge the parts of yourself you've disowned, the anger, the envy, the shame, the profound sadness, the unconscious desires, it can feel like a disintegration of your very identity. The person you thought you were, the persona you presented to the world, begins to crumble. And when the mask cracks, the immediate result isn't clarity or motivation, but a profound disorientation. It's like standing naked in front of a mirror. After years of wearing elaborate costumes, the vulnerability is terrifying, and the urge to retreat into familiar patterns is immense. This is also why the inner child resurfaces with such intensity. Jung recognized the enduring impact of early experiences on the adult psyche. The wounds inflicted in childhood, the unmet needs, the subtle rejections, the messages of inadequacy don't simply vanish. They become complexes, constellations of unconscious feelings, thoughts, and memories that continue to influence adult behavior. The spiritual awakening often brings these complexes to the surface, demanding that you finally parent and heal that wounded, unacknowledged inner child. Until that internal relationship is tended to, until that child feels seen and loved by you, a true, authentic motivation that stems from wholeness cannot emerge. Jung's wisdom teaches us that this state of inertia is not a dead end, but a vital crossroads. It is the fertile ground of transformation. The lack of outer drive signals an immense amount of inner work being done. It's the psyche pulling energy from external pursuits to consolidate its internal structure, to heal its divisions, and to integrate the vast, chaotic contents of the unconscious. He would say that this profound stillness is a necessary period of incubation, a time when the seeds of your authentic self are germinating in the dark earth of your soul. To rush this process, to force external motivation when the inner world is in such upheaval, would be to abort the very individuation you are called to undergo. The universe, through this apparent lack, is giving you a sacred command to stop doing and start being with yourself. It is demanding that you cease the unconscious running and finally face the raw, unedited truth of who you are, without the comforting distractions of external goals. This is the arduous yet profoundly rewarding journey from the fragmented ego to the integrated self, and your present stillness is its most potent invitation. So you stand in the stillness, the old motivations gone, the new ones yet to form. This is not an empty space. It is a sacred crucible. It is an invitation, a profound opportunity to rebuild your foundation, not on the shifting sands of external validation, but on the bedrock of your authentic integrated self. This isn't about doing more. It's about being more. It's about a radical turning inward, a brave descent into the very depths you once fled. The first, most vital step is to embrace the stillness itself. Do not fight it. Do not judge it. Do not frantically search for external solutions to an internal crisis. This lack of motivation is your soul's protective mechanism, forcing you to stop running and finally feel. Sit with it. Observe it. What thoughts arise? What emotions stir beneath the surface? Without judgment, without needing to fix anything, just allow yourself to be present with the discomfort, the emptiness, the anxiety. This is a foundational act of shadow work, observing the unvarnished truth of your inner landscape. Next, turn your gentle gaze towards your inner child. That wounded, abandoned part of you is crying out for attention. Imagine that child within you, perhaps a terrified toddler, a rebellious teenager, a quietly yearning soul. What did they need then that they didn't receive? Unconditional love? Safety? Validation? Now, as the adult you are, you have the capacity to give that to yourself. This isn't about blaming your past. It's about healing it. Spend time actively nurturing this part of you. This could be through journaling, meditation, gentle self-talk, or even creative expression. Ask that inner child what they need today and listen. Comfort their fears. Acknowledge their pain. Tell them they are safe, loved, and enough, just as they are. This deep act of self-parenting begins to mend the original fragmentation, creating a more stable, loving internal core from which genuine motivation can eventually spring. Then there is the raw, untamed power of your shadow. You cannot bypass it. You must embrace it. Start by observing your triggers, your strong reactions to others, your moments of self-sabotage. These are signposts to your unintegrated shadow. When you feel a surge of anger, instead of suppressing it, ask, what is this anger trying to tell me? What boundary has been crossed? What injustice needs to be acknowledged? When you feel deep shame, ask, what am I hiding from myself? What part of me do I believe is unacceptable? This doesn't mean acting out these impulses. It means acknowledging their existence within you. It means making the unconscious conscious. Jung taught that the shadow, when integrated, becomes a source of immense power, creativity, and vitality. It's the gold in the darkness. To integrate the shadow means to recognize that your aggression can become assertiveness, your fear can become prudence, your selfishness can become healthy self-care. It's about reclaiming these disowned aspects and consciously choosing how to express them in a healthy, integrated way. This process demands immense courage, for it requires you to stand face to face with the parts of yourself you have rejected most vehemently. Crucially, let go of the old masks, the persona you once wore. The spiritual awakening has already begun this dismantling, and the lack of motivation is a sign that the energy to maintain that facade is draining away. Allow yourself to be seen by yourself first, and then by trusted others, in your raw vulnerability. This is terrifying, but it is the only path to authentic connection and true self-acceptance. The energy you once spent on performing can now be reclaimed for genuine self-expression. Healing is not a linear path, and it is rarely comfortable. There will be moments of profound grief as you mourn the loss of your old self and the illusions you clung to. There will be anger, fear, and deep insecurity. Allow these emotions to move through you. They are not enemies. They are messengers. Create space for them. Feel them fully, without judgment, and allow them to dissipate. This process of emotional release is vital for clearing the stagnation that holds your motivation captive. Finally, understand that authentic motivation will arise from wholeness, not fragmentation. It will be born of a deep inner knowing, a sense of purpose that is aligned with your true self, not dictated by external pressures. It won't feel like a frantic scramble to prove something. It will feel like a gentle pull, an organic unfolding. As you heal your inner child, integrate your shadow, and shed your persona, you will begin to tap into the boundless wellspring of your unique integrated energy. Your motivation will no longer be an escape from pain, but a natural, joyful expression of your deepest truth. Trust the process. Trust the stillness. It is guiding you home. You came seeking an explanation for the silence, for the void where motivation once thrived. And now, it was not a void, but a profound pause. A sacred breath taken by your soul, demanding a deeper truth. You are not broken. You are simply in the chrysalis, shedding the skin of who you thought you were, preparing to unfurl the wings of who you are destined to become. The world outside still spins, oblivious to the profound, silent revolution unfolding within you. But let it spin. Your journey now is not outward, but deeply inward. It is a descent into the hallowed chambers of your own being, a brave encounter with the shadows and the light you carry. For in that stillness, in that tender meeting with your own unvarnished truth, the old motivations have died so that a new, authentic purpose can be born. Listen closely. Beyond the quiet ache, beyond the lingering doubt, a whisper begins. It is the voice of your integrated self, a compass needle gently, irrevocably, turning towards your true north. It is the hum of purpose, not frantic or forced, but ancient and profound. Trust that whisper. It is the beginning of a motivation that will move mountains, not because you should, but because you are. And in that sacred becoming, you will finally know boundless grace.